Hey everyone, and welcome to Volume 3 of Scary Stories from the Internet. Tonight we have just a little bit over 2 hours worth, as per usual. I hope you all enjoy them. If you do, please be sure to drop a like rating. Let's go for 8 likes on this video. Subscribing if you're new is also very much appreciated, as I post content just like this all of the time. We are 500 subscribers away from 112,000, so if you'd like to share with a friend or on your social media, that is also always very much appreciated. But really quick, I have to put a huge trigger warning on story 9 in this video. So just for context, all of these stories were recorded on live stream last night, and I ended up being a little bit short on time, and a subscriber sent in a story that they wrote, so I ended up narrating it live, and a couple things. It is a story about bugs, so I know a lot of people don't like that. And also the story is extremely inappropriate, extremely grotesque, and very, very bizarre. It is without a doubt the weirdest story I have ever posted on this channel and probably will ever post. I was having the hardest time narrating it, and me and the chat were kind of like, do we even post this? And we came to the conclusion that you should all hear it as well, so it's in the video. Again, story number 9. Huge, giant trigger warning. Cannot say I didn't warn you. Anyway, enjoy the video, and as always, I hope you all have a great night. Good night, everybody. This all started about a week ago, when my wife sent me up to the attic to look for a box of old photos. As I was searching, my flashlight beam passed over something in the corner of the space. A dark mass about as thick as a small tree trunk, with tendrils reaching out onto the floor and ceiling. My first thought was that it must be some kind of crazy black mold growth. I took a few steps towards it to get a better look, and that's when I first saw movement. I remember when I was a kid, finding a giant ant mound in the woods behind my school. This was like that. The shifting of a million little creatures packed closely together. Disgusted, I quickly backed away and left the attic. I told my wife we had some sort of insect infestation and resorted to call pest control later that evening. The next day, 2 exterminators arrived, and I tried explaining to them what I'd seen. They shared a skeptical glance as I was describing the size of the mass, but told me I could be dealing with a large beehive or perhaps termites. I showed them to the attic door, which was the hatch kind, with a drop-down ladder. They didn't ask me to go up with them, which I found to be a relief because I didn't want to look at the thing again. Just thinking about it made my skin crawl. I stood at the base of the ladder for about 10 minutes until finally they came back down. I didn't think I've ever seen an expression like the one the lead exterminator was wearing. He was white as a sheet, his eyes ever wide. "Will you be able to take care of it?" I asked. He had a thick South American accent. English clearly wasn't his first language. "This is not for us," he said simply. "What exactly am I dealing with?" He didn't answer. He shook his head. I saw his coworker make the sign of the cross. I was starting to get a bit annoyed. I asked, "Well, do you have any recommendations?" He looked me dead in the eyes. "Move." The 2 of them left quickly after that. I was stunned, but my surprise soon turned to anger. These guys were supposed to be professionals, weren't they? I decided I'd hire a different exterminator company. In the meantime, just to be safe, I checked my family into a hotel. Blaine's Pest Control advertised themselves as the ultimate vermin annihilators, so I gave them a call and arranged a time for them to show up to our property. The day came and went, and I didn't get a call back from them. I decided I needed to go to the house. When I arrived, a white van was parked in my driveway with a green logo on the side that read, Blaine's Pest Control. I knocked on the front door of the house before letting myself in with my key. "Hello?" I called as I stepped inside. No response. I moved to the second story. The door to the attic was on the ceiling in the upstairs hallway, and I saw that it was open, the ladder fully extended. I decided to check it out. I climbed the ladder, and when I reached the top, I took out my phone and turned on the flashlight app. There was no sign of anyone else there. Once again, I saw the mass positioned in the corner, thick and black and squirmy. This time, curiosity got the best of me, and I decided I needed to have a closer look at it. I forced myself to move in, holding the light out as far in front of me as possible. When I first saw the creatures up close, I thought they were spiders. That is, until I took a couple more steps forward. I realized they looked more like tiny starfish, only with 4 tendril-like legs instead of 5. They were jet black with uniformly smooth bodies, each about the size of a quarter. They scurried over each other at a frantic pace. I stared at them with horrified fascination. They were like nothing I'd ever seen before. Then suddenly I heard a pop. Looking down, I found one of the creatures clinging to my shirt. I slapped it off immediately. Taking a step back, I pointed my phone light back into the mass. I saw that the swarm had slowed its movement. Some of them had even stopped. Then I saw one jump. There was this toy that kids used to have when I was in school. A small half sphere made of rubber. You'd press it down against a hard surface, and when you released, it would spring up into the air. The creature moved like that, flinging itself upward with an audible pop. Another one followed, then another. Before I could move, dozens of them were flying toward me, landing on my chest, arms, face. I threw myself backwards, dropping my phone as I frantically slapped them away. I lost my footing and fell on my ass. Pop, 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 pop. I heard them go. I scurried backwards, blindly swatting at my skin. In my panic, I fell backwards through the attic trapdoor, missing the ladder entirely and landing hard on my tailbone. In the light of the hallway, I could see the creatures more clearly and was able to brush them all away. I watched as they scurried off in different directions, disappearing under doors and into crevices. Just when I thought I was clean, I felt an intense stinging sensation on my neck, like something pressing a power drill into my skin. I grabbed at the spot and pulled away one of the creatures, flinging it down the hallway. I got to my feet shakily, quickly raising the ladder and slamming the attic door. I, nor anyone else, will be going up there ever again, I told myself. I was heading for the staircase when something out of the corner of my eye caught my attention. The door to my son's room was slightly ajar, and I thought I saw a dark shape through the crack. Cautiously, I pushed the door open and looked inside. As I'd feared, I saw another one of the hives. Like the one in the attic, it was positioned near the corner of the room. However, this one was smaller and looked different. It had a central cylindrical trunk, with a pair of tendrils reaching out at the floor, and another pair higher up against the wall. As well, there was an ovular bulb at the top. It was oddly human-shaped, I thought. Through the shifting of the starfish creature, I stayed at a distance this time so I couldn't make them out individually. I could see white canvas beneath the swarm of black. I caught sight of a green logo, which looked suspiciously like that of Blaine's Pest Control. Needless to say, I got the hell out of that house. Only 2 days later, it mysteriously burned to the ground. The police told us they couldn't rule out arson. If it was, I'm sure whoever was responsible was just trying to do the right thing. Hopefully they were smart enough to buy their materials out of town, to pay in all cash, and to avoid any traffic cameras on their way to and from the scene of the crime. Hopefully they didn't wake their wife as they crawled into bed that night, and hopefully she didn't pick up the faint smell of gasoline lingering on their skin the next morning. Hopefully. And that's that, right? The only thing is, I've had this itching sensation in my neck. There's a welt there now, too. About the size of a ping pong ball. I'm going to go to the doctor tomorrow to have it checked out. Wish me luck. It's one of the worst sounds ever, isn't it? Babies crying, screaming. Nothing you can do will make them shut the fuck up. You feed them, you change them, you rock them, you cuddle, sing, and do everything you can think of. Yet they scream. You would do anything if you just knew what they wanted, but you have no way to find out. They can't tell you. I can. I'm a unique individual, I guess you can say. There are others like me. We even have a Discord now. I miss the days when we had a forum and everything was easily archived, but times change and so do we. The only ones we can really talk to is each other. Nobody else believes us. We're trapped, knowing the truth, yet unable to convince the world that we're not lunatics. Lunatics, I guess we are, sorta. We lost our minds a long time ago because we can't forget. We know why babies cry because we were babies once ourselves. And unlike the vast majority of people who don't start forming memories until they're older, we were different. We remember everything. You see, babies are still in limbo, so to speak, when they are born. Their soul, yeah, souls are real. Their soul isn't quite separated from where we come from in the human body we inhabit. How do I know that? Well, I remember that part too. I was floating in the nether, unsure of why I was no longer driving my children to Burger King, and then I caught a flash of the accident that took my life. Before I could process what happened, I was judged. Being judged isn't like you'd think. There are no pearly gates, golden roads, or mansions in the sky. You're simply judged. Bad? Well, that's what hell is for. Good? Great, you get sent back to Earth. Recycled, reincarnated, whatever. Thing is, the better you were in your previous life, the better you end up the second time around. Some people are stuck in the gray area, which is where I ended up. Those in the gray area get sent back, but instead of being given a better position, they're given a worse one. Round 2 is harder. Even though you're not supposed to remember a damn thing about what you did wrong. So how can you change a damn... Sorry, I'm going on a rant. Bottom line, the system is rigged against you. Every good soul is going to end up in a bad situation when they don't make the best choices eventually. The law of averages is going to prevail. For those starting in a worse position than they previously had, they're already headed towards the wrong end of the gray area. You see that, right? I'm not crazy? Why? Who knows? There doesn't appear to be a god or anything. It's just an automated system where you're whisked towards your destination. An algorithm measures your worth and you're sent on to your next life. The whole experience is jarring to say the least. I don't have the luxury of remembering any life before my previous ones. Other guys on the Discord say they can remember multiple lives, but we've attracted some weirdos to our group over the years, and sometimes it's hard to know who is actually telling the truth. I was sent back to Earth less than an hour after I was driving my kids to Burger King. I didn't know if they lived or died. All I knew was that I was dead. So yeah, I came out of my new mom screaming. Wouldn't you? Turns out that wasn't the only thing I would have to scream about as the day passed. You see, hell is terrible. It's a terrible place. Probably is that all those souls down there, all these souls that were bad in their previous life, yeah, they found a loophole. The barrier that exists between the real world, if you want to call it that, and the afterlife. It's pretty damn thin. With the right amount of effort, and a host that isn't quite fully connected with their new host, that's a body you can take. So imagine you're a baby. You just got born. You are still remembering bits and pieces of your previous life while trying to figure out why you're a baby. You scream a lot, but the bits and pieces begin to fade. There's that moment where you are becoming a baby. You're forgetting everything. Then you're lying on the crib in the middle of the night. Open your eyes, and there's a demon peering down at you. Those paintings you've seen of demons? Pretty accurate. There are other people that have remembered, all through history. Some big, some small, all hideous. In order for them to break through, they gotta make you give up. They need you to separate from the host. With the right amount of fear, it can happen. But regardless, you're screaming. You're screaming your head off all night long some nights. When you should really worry is when the baby stops screaming. Either the demon has given up, or they got your little bundle of joy. Congrats, now you're raising the reincarnation of Ted Bundy or Charles Manson. It's a vicious cycle, and where do the souls go that give up and detach? Nobody knows. None of us have ever met one. The little that we do know has been pieced together from bits and pieces of memories, assembled into something that is almost cohesive. Luckily, most of that was done before we started sharing our story, and attracted a lot of people who believe in Mandela effects and space aliens. One of those is crazy. I'll let you figure out which one it is. But yeah, that's all I got for you. I thought I'd tell you why babies cry, and now you know. They're either mourning a life they still remember, or staring down a demon. Sometimes more than one. Hell, maybe we should all be screaming. I think my wife, 28 female, is cheating on me. What should I do? I guess I noticed it right after Easter. That was when the red flags were half-staffed. But I mean, for granted this week was far more normal anyway. This year we flocked from doing they go to her mother's and want to blast my brains out while her racist uncles discuss politics and conspiracy theories. While her mother gets on my ass about why I haven't managed to get my master's degree yet and give her daughter a better future. And instead we went to this little cabin upstate, far, far away from the headache that is my in-laws. Now the holiday went relatively normal. Instead of a traditional turkey, we ordered a pizza from this little pizza place stuffed in the corner of a sleepy town and watched Netflix on my laptop. Thank God for a mobile hotspot. That's what makes this so confusing. So, we were so okay. So fine. Everything, and I mean everything, screamed normal. If anything, I think we had a better connection than we did at home. We even managed to get some work done. I did some writing, and she did some photography in the beautiful Massachusetts wilderness. Everything felt perfect until it didn't. That's when I first noticed her phone. I guess the notifications started getting really bad on our way home. The next day, the slight buzz of her phone on her lap while she passed out seeped through the quiet morning talk show radio, at least 20 times in an hour. I ignored it, jotting it down to finally just getting in range of a good cell signal. Maybe work, or her mom. But it didn't stop. Throughout the next 3 days, I'd hear that faint buzz. I actually did try and see who it was on the first night. She left her phone on the couch as she went into the kitchen to make a new bag of popcorn, and as she did, the phone's vibration rippled right to me. It was like a drug addiction, and I needed my fix. I watched for it, but as I did, she bolted right back in the room like a horror movie and snagged it before I could. Eventually, I just snapped. "Alright, who the hell is that? It's been going off all day," I asked hopelessly. "It's just a friend," she said shortly before turning around and darting back into the kitchen, cell phone in hand. Just a friend. Okay, I trust her. And if it's just a friend, it's just a friend. I mean, nothing wrong with friends, right? You have friends, I have friends. Friends are good. Friends are healthy. But friends can sometimes be boyfriends, and boyfriends can ruin a marriage. I tried to let it go. I tried to brush it off, but the chip on my shoulder just dug and dug. But the thought of her cheating on me twisted my stomach like a wet towel. And like a wet towel, that curiosity was to drip somewhere, and a few drops can soon turn into a puddle. Saturday stayed about the same. She felt distant. She looked distant. She smiled at her phone. Her nails clicked softly at the screen as I sipped my coffee across the kitchen table. "Something funny?" I asked jokingly. She gazed up almost startled. Oh, nothing. One of the parenting class months just sent me a funny post about something. Oh, can I see? I asked curiously. You wouldn't get it. Pregnant mom things, she said, laughing as she walked into the living room. And that was about all of it. We didn't talk much throughout the day. I stayed in my office in hopes to make a Monday deadline, and she was somewhere doing something. When I did come downstairs, I'd catch glimpses of her watching TV in the living room or folding laundry. I knew I needed to talk to her about it, but maybe this was just a hormonal thing. I mean, she was 6 months pregnant. Was distancing normal? I mean, maybe it was just a friend. A really annoying friend. Eventually, through the self-coaxing throughout the day, the thought of her cheating seemed impractical. And then tonight happened. I was coming into our bedroom for the night, and as I flipped on the light, it revealed her sitting at the edge of our bed, nose deep in her phone, and that's when I lost it. Okay. Who is that? I asked angrily as I walked toward her. Her head peeked up like a dog, and as I got closer, she held the phone away in the opposite direction. I told you, it's a friend. God, she said, standing up before trying to walk around me out of the room. I grabbed her arm tightly and pulled her back towards me, and with a serious tone I asked, Abby, seriously, are you cheating on me? I asked, letting go of her arm. For real? What, did you find someone while you were in town? Is that who's been blowing up your phone the last 2 days? No, Jesus Christ, no. You really want to know? It's a surprise. It's for your birthday, you ignorant jackass, she said as she shoved me off her. I could feel my face seep pale as she stormed out of the room. Tears ran down her face. She stayed downstairs and I stayed confined in the bedroom, scared to even get in her sight. I stared at the ceiling until about 2 a.m. when I heard the creak of the door open and the lights clicked on. She stood in the doorway, stone-faced. They think my mom got a heart attack. They're taking her to the hospital by ambulance. I gotta go. Oh my God. Yeah, okay, I'll drive, I said, sitting up and going to my dresser drawer to get a jacket. No, you stay. God, the sight of you will just piss her off. I'll text you updates, hopefully. I'll be home by the morning. She turned around to go back out the door, but stopped and turned back. I love you, she said before walking out. I love you too. I yelled towards the door before sitting back down on the bed. My thoughts finally settled, but after 2 days worth of that madness, my half-staffed red flags were full-blown, and that's when that thought circled back to me. Was she meeting with someone? Was her mom really hurt? So I did the only logical thing I could think of as I caught my eyes on her MacBook sitting on the bedside table, and as much as I knew I shouldn't, I had to settle the curiosity. Opening the computer lid, the screen illuminated against my face, and as I clicked the iMessage icon, I read this. Alright, money has been received. I'll be there in 20. Find a good excuse to leave the house. I'll try to make it quick and clean. So what should I do? It all started in Vegas. I was on a bogus trip with some acquaintances. Not quite friends, but I thought some booze and gambling would help me forget how overwhelmed and underappreciated I am. Something to shake things up and break the routine. I just felt so trapped. I swear that even my dreams took place in my godforsaken little cubicle. I had never been to a real casino before. I'd read articles about how they're psychologically designed to ensnare people in feedback loops. Those articles are spot on. No clocks or windows. It's always fun o'clock on the game floor, as if the rest of the world doesn't exist. Only you and that dangling carrot. Their disorienting layout might seem chaotic, but it's deliberately, devilishly designed to send you down each of its numerous corridors. And of course, free drinks. One way or another, somebody's paying. Knowing the tricks, I was determined to not be made a fool of. You win some, you lose a lot, but there's only so much I was willing to lose. For me, that was $1,000. I lost that much in about half an hour. I was enjoying a $1,000 martini when this stranger sits down next to me, a big dumb smile on his face. He tells me he's just won $3,000 at craps. As if I asked. His breath reeks of smoke, but he's so proud of himself. I just gotta smile and act impressed. I must be a lousy actor because he asks me how much I'm in the red. I say 500 and this guy gets this look like he's Buddha or something and hands me a $50 token. He tells me to have fun but not too much fun. Before I could ask his name or say thanks, he got up and disappeared into the crowd. The token looked a little different from the other tokens. Instead of a flat plastic finish, it had a glossy wooden one. I thought it was a quirky, commemorative thing, and none of the dealers had any complaints about me using it. Neither did I at first. Right away, I started winning big. 50 turned into 100 like nothing. I blinked and 100 turned into 500, then 1,000, then more. I won everything back even faster than I had lost it. Forget Cloud 9. I was on Cloud 11. I was about to bet on this roulette game when one of my acquaintances wanted to catch up. Roger or Robert, something like that. He was pretty drunk and eager to tell me about it. I had my bet locked down in my head. 100 on Black 9. But I didn't get the chance to place it. R was rambling about something, but my attention is on the table and the wooden chip I'm thumbing in my pocket. The ball spun round and round. Black 9. A 35-1 payoff down the drain. Dazed. I managed some small talk with R until he was satisfied and made sure I got my bet in on the next spin. Red 5. What's the worst that could happen? The ball rolls. Red 5. Exactly correct again. What are the odds? I had won more than my generous donor at this point, but I wasn't smiling like an idiot. Not sure what face I was making. It felt like I was getting away with something. I went to blackjack, got blackjack twice, thrice. I didn't stick around for a fourth. Whatever, that's not impossibly rare. Went to slots, 777's first try. I can't say I was having fun at this point. I won't say how much I made that evening, but it was enough that I started to get paranoid. It's not like I was cheating or counting cards, but I didn't know if there was some excuse they could have for denying me my winnings. If you could call them that. It was more like early dawn by the time I left the building. All my acquaintances were long gone. I stopped by a gift shop on the way out to pick up some souvenir dice and a deck of hole punch cards. A cab showed up almost as soon as I got onto the curb. It felt funny coming back to my crappy hotel room knowing that I had enough cash to afford the best hotels in the area. As soon as my door creaked shut behind me, I stuck my hand in my pocket feeling the wooden chip. Of course, I didn't turn that one in. I had to test something out. A part of me imagined that it was some elaborate scam to turn a loser into a winner, get them to come back and bet even more the next day. A more irrational part of me said something weirder was happening. My eyes were sore from the constantly flashing casino lights, so I kept the curtains closed, opting to work by dim lamplight. I started small with the simplest test of luck I could think of. Coin flips. I called heads, got heads, repeat. Every time I flipped that quarter, it landed heads. Every time. At what point does it become more than just chance? 20 heads in a row? 26? It's technically possible, but unlikely. I kept checking the coin to make sure it wasn't some gimmick toy with 2 heads, but no. It was only an ordinary quarter. After 100 heads in a row, I couldn't take it anymore. Next were dice. I grabbed a handful, said 8 sixes and rolled. 8 sixes came up. I pulled out the deck of cards and shuffled them thoroughly. I said 9 of hearts, then flipped the top over. 9 of hearts. Big surprise. I said royal flush and flipped the top 5 all at once. Printed on the cards in a scratchy red font were the letters HELLO. I practically jumped out of my chair, dropping the cards onto the carpet and knocking over the lamp, plunging the room into darkness. I scrambled to find the light switch, unsure of what I had seen. I found the switch eventually, but was seized by this feeling that I shouldn't turn the light back on. It felt like someone was in the room with me, but what was I going to do? Stand around in the dark with them? I clicked on the lights, and the room was oddly normal. The lamp and cards weren't even knocked off of the desk. I blinked and flipped all the cards over. They were just normal playing cards. I double-checked them all and chalked up my reaction to too much alcohol and adrenaline mixed with not enough sleep. Crawling into bed and passing out was about all I had energy left for. The next day I went straight to the casino and started winning again. More cautiously this time. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me the whole time. Kind of a ridiculous thing to worry about in a room full of people and security cameras, but even still, it felt wrong, but I won a lot. That night, on my way to the hotel, I got so distracted thinking about the darn wooden chip that I didn't realize someone snuck up behind me. So stupid. He demanded that I empty my pockets or he would kill me. I'd never been mugged before. Of course it would happen when my wallet was full of more cash than I had ever seen in one place. So much for luck, right? I turned around to see he was pointing a gun at my head just a few feet away. Immediately I emptied my pockets. I didn't think twice. My hands were shaking so bad and my bones felt like rocks. Just numb, but all that feeling came back to me when I realized I was about to hand over my wooden chip. I asked the mugger if I could keep the chip. He says to hand over everything or he'd blow my head off. It's just a worthless souvenir, I told him. So stupid. He asks me if I want to die today. I put the chip back in my pocket but continue handing him my wallet. The mugger took a step forward, making some threat when he tripped over his foot and fell on his face. I heard a bang and he stopped moving. The back of his head fell off and I ran away as fast as I could. I didn't gamble anymore after that. With my winnings, I saw great shows, terrible stand-ups, and had fancy, overpriced dinners. Even after all that, there was plenty left over. I probably could have stayed forever using that wooden chip to keep winning, but the thought didn't cross my mind. The only thing that repeated in my head was, don't have too much fun. Knowing that I could always win turned the games into something else. They weren't fun anymore, but it felt good to win. I couldn't give up. I wouldn't give up. Not for anything. I figured that the creeping feeling I was getting was because I was worried that the guy who gave me the chip would come asking for it back and that he wouldn't be too nice about it. Or that I'd get mugged again. I don't know how it worked. Yeah, I was paranoid. It was enough to give me leave a full day early. Without my acquaintances, I booked a last-minute flight home and crawled into my tiny bed. Clutching the wooden chip, I hardly slept. The next day, there's this huge news story of a plane that went down in a freak accident. My God, a flight out of Las Vegas. The plane I would have been on before I rescheduled. How lucky. No survivors. I went to the toilet and threw up. The next few days are a blur. I called in sick and stayed in bed. One day I got in my piece of junk car and drove to a convenience store. I bought some cigarettes and a scratch lottery ticket and scratched it off. It was worth $10,000. I threw the ticket in the trash. The wooden chip burned in my pocket. Maybe because I was clutching it so tight my knuckles turned white. A homeless man was begging outside of the convenience store, jangling coins in a little plastic bucket. He smelled of cigarettes and had a friendly smile. I gave him $100, but he just looked afraid. I asked him if he wanted more and he shook his head and tore up the 100. He wouldn't look me in the eye. just looked right past me and started shouting, telling me to go away. He wouldn't stop shouting even as I got in my car and left. On the way back home, I drove past a nasty car accident on the path I had just taken to get to the convenience store. Brutal T-bone. Ambulance and all. I just passed by there earlier. Seems I barely missed being a part of it. A child was crying. There was a mangled body on the road. Something came over me. You could say I went a little crazy. I took the nearest route to the highway and floored the gas pedal, going from 40 to 50 to 60, then faster and faster. No police officer would stop me. There weren't even any other cars for some reason. I knew if I crashed, I would somehow miraculously survive. The last thing I recall was laughing or crying when I saw something shift in my rearview mirror. Like someone was in the back seat. Everything went black. A few months later, I woke up in the hospital, hooked up to a machine barely keeping me alive. I can't move any parts of my body except my eyes, which I'm using to dictate this story to the computer. The doctors say that I'm beyond lucky to still be alive. Don't I know it? Complete recovery is nearly impossible, but at my current rate, I might be able to move my fingers again in just 10 short years. I don't know where the wooden chip is anymore. I've asked, and it wasn't one of the items recovered from my car crash. If any of you happen to come across it, if someone offers it to you, don't make the same mistake I did. So get this. I wake up running late for work. My boss is going to hate me. Third time this week. I was in a rush. Here I am waiting in the drive-thru line at Dunkin's. Carol must not be working today. Whenever she works, the line always goes by fast. If she's not there, well, it is my own personal hell of getting upset over the line bumper to bumper traffic with no end in sight, even though the window is right there. That's when I noticed the first plate. The blue is what stuck out on the license plate. A harsh distinction. Weird. We never see out-of-state plates in this town. I didn't think much about it on account of my boss was going to give me more than an earful if I didn't get this coffee in under 5 minutes. So I get to the window and this girl is like handing me my coffee and she says something, thanks for choosing Dutch Bros. The fuck is that? I just go. I don't have time to deal with someone who's clearly drunk from the night before. As I hit more traffic, I notice another Nevada plate. It's not the same car as before. It's a cherry red convertible on the road in dead winter. It's not snowing or anything, but not weather for, well, driving with the top down. Then another, and another. There's no main plates on the road. I would think I was dreaming or something if the panic of me only having 1 minute and 45 seconds to get into work and clock in wasn't overtaking every functioning thought I had. I'm not ashamed. I admit I ran from my car to my office building, ran up the stairs, and kept clicking on my computer until it loaded. Clock in time. 6:59 and 57 seconds. Suck it, Lucy. I swiveled my chair to point out I made it on time, but no one is there. I double take, then triple take. I go inside Lucy's office. The light is off. It doesn't look like anyone is here. I check my phone. It's a Thursday. Not a holiday either. Everyone should be here. Okay, this joke is lame, guys. I know I've been late, but you can come out now. I say maybe only to myself. Maybe to my coworkers, pulling some kind of, I am an adult, but I am going to act like I am in high school prank. No one comes out. I call Lucy. My phone makes this god-awful static screech. Then I hear her voice. Look, if you are going to be late, I don't want an excuse anymore. 4 times this week. 4 times. I am at the office. At my desk. With all due respect, I called because, you are the one not here. I say, I am not a babysitter. I have a business to run. I can see your desk from my office. It's empty. Goodbye. Don't bother coming back. Save us both the HR-filled firing chat. There's the hang-up signal. I look around the office, the same office I see Monday through Friday. It's my office. I look at the parking lot and only see my car, but then another car pulls in. I don't recognize it. It has Nevada plates. That's not the only one. Another pulls in a few seconds later. Nevada plates. Then another. I don't know what's going on. I don't like the feeling I am getting. For now, I go to Lucy's office and lock the door. It feels like the freaking Twilight Zone or The Walking Dead, and I am not going to croak at 25 because I didn't want to look stupid. What should I do? I was walking to my car as quickly as I could. I checked my watch. It was 7:15 p.m. I shook my head. My phone rang. The screen showed that it was my wife calling, right on time. "You better be close to the restaurant," she said. The tone in her voice left me wondering if she knew that I was just leaving the office. I stayed silent. "Damn it, Jack," she cursed quietly. "I'm already here." "I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much work I would have to get done today. And we're still not on pace to make our deadline. The whole team is working late, not just me. And I can't be the only person leaving on time when my subordinates are staying late," I pleaded. "How long until you get here?" she asked angrily. "If I run every red light, I can be there in 30 minutes, I told her. She didn't answer for a long while. I got into my car, and just as I started to wonder if she had hung up on me, my car picked up the Bluetooth. "Okay, just hurry. It's bad enough the waiter has asked me twice if I was waiting for someone," she instructed. "I'm sorry, babe. I'll be there as soon as I can," I said. I shifted my car into reverse and started to back up. A loud bang on my window made me slam on the brakes. I threw it into the park and turned around to see if I hit something or, worse, someone. I didn't see anything. I turned back around in my seat to find two children standing next to my door. I jumped at the shock. They both just stood there. Judging by their size, I would guess they were about 9 or 10. I had this terrible feeling in my stomach that there was something wrong. But they were children, probably lost, I told myself. I cracked the window just enough to ask if I could help them. "Can I use your phone?" one of the kids asked. The child's tone had a tinge of darkness to it. I felt the hairs on my neck stand up, but I reached for my phone and unlocked it. When I looked back up at the child, I noticed they had both moved closer. They both stared at their feet. Their hoods up over their head cast shadows over their faces. It almost appeared they didn't have any faces at all. At that point, I had this unyielding sense of fear building that I couldn't justify. "Is there someone you'd like for me to call for you?" I asked. Then one of the kids raised his head slightly. The shadows that covered his face parted as the new angle of his hood allowed me to see his face. But his eyes were still hidden in the shadows. They appeared to be pitch black. Not that they were missing, but he had no iris, no whites in his eyes at all. I felt my breath catch in my throat, and the boy seemed to notice my fear. He lowered his head again. "We need to use your phone," he pleaded. I recovered and scolded myself quietly for allowing a trick of the light to scare me so badly. "Who can I call for you? Just give me their number," I said, my hand ready to dial. Maybe it was the fact that the kids wouldn't look at me. Maybe it was the fact that the kids were out of place in the business district after sundown. But something inside me was screaming not to give them my phone. "If you can't give me the number, I'm sure you can go inside the lobby and ask the security guard to let you call your parents," I said and pointed down to the lobby door. Neither one of them turned to look. After a few seconds of awkward silence, I put my car in reverse. I was eager to get the hell out of there. I was eager to get away from these children. I looked in the rearview mirror to make sure I was clear. A loud bang stopped me in my tracks. For a split second, I thought I hit someone, and then I heard it again. Both of the boys were slapping their hands, palm down, on my driver's side window. A third time, a fourth time. In unison, they slapped my window. "Can we just get in your car? We need a ride," they asked in a monotone and utterly unsettling tone. I slammed the gas down and backed up without even looking, and then I slammed into drive and peeled out. I was a good 10 minutes down the road before my heart stopped trying to beat out of my chest. I was so worked up that I almost missed my exit. I wanted to get home so bad I had forgotten about date night. I met my wife at her favorite restaurant and we ate. She was initially angry about me being late. We hadn't had much time alone since we had our son. He was 4 now, and this was probably our 5th date night in that 4 years. Her mood switched from being angry to laughing at me as I explained why I was so late. I told her everything about the kids. "So you were scared of a couple of kids? They could still be out there looking for their parents," she heckled me. She knew how scared I was. There was something wrong with them, but she didn't believe it. At least, not at that point. Our son was staying at the babysitter's house all night, so we had the house to ourselves. It was 3 a.m. when we heard the knock at the door. I woke up first and just sat in bed and listened. There was a faint, steady knock at the door. In threes, knock, knock, knock. And then a pause followed by another set of 3. Knock, knock, knock. Then my wife woke up. "Do you hear that?" she asked. "Yeah, there's someone at the front door," I replied. My heart sped up. I knew before I did that it was them. My wife sat up and grabbed her phone. "It's after 3 a.m. Who could it be?" she asked. "And they didn't hit the doorbell," she added. She opened the doorbell app on her phone to reveal an empty porch. There was nobody there. She showed me. The knocking continued, and then I saw them. There was a faint silhouette in the darkness. "Zoom in there," I said and pointed to the corner of the steps. She did, and we could see them. The 2 boys were standing in the shadows. One of them kicked the steps. Knock, knock, knock. My wife looked at me. "There is no way those kids followed you home. This has to be a joke," she said. She stood up and put on her robe. I did too. We both made our way downstairs. We argued as we walked. She wanted to open the door. I didn't. Knock, knock, knock. "We can't open the door," I told her. "There's just kids playing a prank," she replied. Knock, knock, knock. Finally, we reached the door and my wife undid the locks and swung it open. We both took a step back as soon as we did. The kids were no longer standing in the shadow, but had moved up to the first step. The only light was from behind us flowing out of the house. It was enough for us to see the 2 small figures staring at us, but not enough to see any detail. "What do you want?" my wife asked. I was flipping the light switch on and off for the porch light. It wouldn't come on, but I knew it had been on when we got home. "Can we come inside?" the kids asked in unison. I could see that my wife had gone pale. She finally believed me. Something wasn't right. The kids took a step to the next step. "Can we call the police for you? Are you lost?" she asked them. They stepped up to the porch, and then they were close enough. Just 3 feet away, their faces were fully illuminated. The light revealed the same thing I thought I had seen earlier. Wide eyes, black as coal. He began to smile at us. "We need to come inside. We need help." They said in unison as if they shared the same thoughts. I moved my wife out of the way and slammed the door. My hands fumbled for the locks as I looked through the peephole. I'm calling the cops, I yelled through the door. My wife still had her phone in her hand. She started to dial 911. Wait, I said. They're leaving. I told her. The kids walked back into the street and disappeared into the night. The next day we slept in and then picked up our son. It was a pretty uneventful day. At least until 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of knocking. I sat up, half asleep. I heard my wife tell me it was just our son. I'll get it, she told me. I went back to sleep. That was about 10 minutes ago. I noticed she didn't come back to bed, and I decided I'd check the security cameras on my phone. My wife is laying on the floor dead. There's blood everywhere. Standing at her feet are the two boys, and next to them is my son. His eyes were black as coal. As I'm writing this, I can hear them walking down the hall toward me. For the love of God, if you see black-eyed children, do not talk to them. Do not give them anything, and please, do not let them into your house. My name is Amy. I am 29, and this is my story. My love for helping people came at a young age. I have always been very empathetical. I also was very mature for my age growing up. I was always the helpful one of the friend group and often would be the one people came to when they had any issues. This is what led me to become a 999 operator worker. I felt like being on the receiving end would allow me to use my empathy skills to really help people. I had been there for 4 years and loved every day. It was a highly stressful job, and some of the calls often kept me up at night. But there's this one call I got. It is the reason I am writing this. I need help. I can't talk to anyone personally about this, as they will think I'm some crazy woman who needs medicating. I promise you I'm not crazy. It started about 3 months ago. It must have been some sort of record for how cold that January evening was. I was working the night shift, 7 p.m. until 3 a.m. This was a one-off, as I usually worked mornings to fit in line with my son, Harry, who is 14 and needs taking and picking up from school. I'm a single mother, widow, so fitting work around school is quite difficult, but luckily I have a super supportive manager. I'd been on nights only once before and had just signed up to work the next week to cover some of Alicia's work since she left on her honeymoon. I don't mind it. The extra money sure helped. I left Harry with my mom that week. She's been so helpful since my husband Dan died. Anyway, the first instance happened the first day of the week-long night shifts. Pretty normal night, according to the regulars. Slow, and the calls were anything of major concern. Commonly your typical broken leg, stolen purse, those types of crimes. My phone rang. Hello, 999, ambulance, police, or fire? I answered. No response. Hello, is anyone there? This was fairly common. Kids trying to pull pranks, but we are required to follow protocol and weren't allowed to hang up. Hello, please help me. A voice of what seemed to be a young girl, perhaps 12 or 13. Hard to tell at this point. Yes, hello. How can I help you? Are you okay? I asked the girl. I don't know where I am. The man just left. He will be back soon. I grow concerned. Has this girl been kidnapped? Is she hurt? Tell me what happened. I can help you. I asked in a calm tone, worried on the inside. I was playing with my sister on the street. I live with my mom and dad in Ersham, just down the road from the village hall. A man, he drove up to us and asked what we were doing. Asked me where my mom and dad were. I told him they were inside cooking dinner for us. He got out of the van and asked if he could play. Then he... The girl stopped talking mid-sentence. I heard a faint door shudder. It sounded like it was coming from downstairs. Are you okay? Is someone there? I asked her. The phone cut off. The phone just went seconds before I could trace the call. I ring the number back, but get the voicemail service. Getting worried, I go and find the night manager to report what just happened. I was told to keep trying the phone, but it won't connect. Then there is something I can do other than report it to the police, which I did. I finished work at 3 a.m., drove home, and didn't sleep that night. Thinking about the call all night, I was so worried. I kept thinking about the little girl, thinking about her and her sister playing a game, and then being taken. The next morning I got out of bed, picked up Harry from my mom's, and told her what had happened. She was distraught too. I didn't let Harry hear, as this was the type of news you wouldn't want your son to hear. I took him to school, and he just kept asking about how my night was at work. I told him it was fine and said no more. I think you could tell I was worried from the hastiness in my voice. When I started work that night, I prayed that the little girl would call again so I could help her. To my avail, the phone rang. It was her. I remember the caller ID number. Hello? Are you okay?
Hello? I rang yesterday. I need your help. My name is Emily. I'm 14 and I've been taken from my home by a man I don't know. Please help me. I'm scared.
Hold on, Emily. I'm tracing the call. I'll get you help, I promise. I tried to reassure her that I was going to get her home to her parents safely.
He's back. I have to go. Help me. I'm begging you.
The phone cut off again. I am starting to get more and more worried. I can't take much more of this. What if it were my son, Harry? The words, "I'm begging you," repeated over and over in my head. All I could hear was the pain in her voice. She sounds terribly scared. After the phone was disconnected, I managed to get the location of the call. It wasn't far. I patched myself through to the local police station and told them what had happened, but when they asked for the name of the victim, the officer on the phone went silent.
Emily, you say? Are you sure?
The officer sounded confused. Why would he question that? Is there something I'm missing? Yes, Emily, age 14 from Irsham. Lives just down the road from the village hall, she says. Can you do anything with this information? I know it's not much, but she needs our help.
Amy, is it? Emily is an old case. Very old. She was kidnapped from her home in Irsham around 30 years ago. Police found the man who took her, but it was too late. Emily's body was recovered near the house she was held in for over 2 years.
The officer awaited my response, but I was speechless. I physically couldn't talk. And that was my last day as an operator. I'm telling you, I'm not crazy. I spoke with Emily. Please believe me. I just need someone to believe me. What do you do when your perceptions of reality break? How do you move forward with your day when the knowledge you have paralyzes you? The first time I experienced such a feeling was when in combat and the snap hiss of bullets around you makes you question everything you thought you knew. I'm at the same precipice as I'm writing this. After my tours of duty, I put my skills in the military police to work and hung my shingle as a private investigator. Most of the job was chasing down deadbeats owing child support or catching adulterers in the act, but I finally felt a bit of freedom I needed. That all changed when I got a call 2 weeks ago from an unknown number. I picked up, expecting yet another automated message about my extended warranty expiring, but was met with a gruff and low voice.
Is this Detective Nate Gazameyer?
Yeah, can I help you?
You came recommended by Captain Rodriguez as someone who can handle things discreetly.
I sat forward at the mention of my former CO's name. Oh? And who might I be speaking with then?
Alistair Baines.
The gruff voice responded, and my eyes opened wide. The Baines were old money with their hands in various industrial and production enterprises. More than a few of my clients had worked for them, and their reputation as a ruthless family was legendary.
I take it by your silence you know who I am, so I will dispense with the pleasantries. I need someone to retrieve my daughter, Cassie. She has taken up with some rather nasty folks and refuses to listen to reason. My patience with the matter has ended and needs to be remedied. I reached out to my contact to find a fixer for this, and your name was mentioned.
I recalled that my captain said he was going off to consult with a Baines subsidiary after he left the service. Forgive me, Mr. Baines, but are you asking me to kidnap your daughter?
I'm asking you to use your skill and tact to rescue her from a group of people taking advantage of her and her family's money.
And what group is that, if I might ask?
Some hippie cult group calling themselves the Bringers of the Light has managed to seduce my Cassie into funding them and their endeavors. Some such nonsense about saving the world, but they've poisoned her against me and her mother. Now she won't return our calls, and even cutting off her access to funds hasn't deterred her. She's been brainwashed, I tell you, and I need you to go return her to safety with her family.
I let the information sink in before responding. The Baines were not a family you wanted to get caught up with, and this put a target on my back. Mr. Baines, I have quite a few clients at the moment, and I'm not sure if I have time.
If you can return her safely to me,
The gruff voice interrupted.
I will pay you $2 million.
And I spit out my coffee.
I hope this ends pointless negotiating or posturing. So, do we have an agreement?
I should have said no. The amount alone should have told me not to go forward, but I muttered, yes.
Good. My assistant will be forwarding you the information on her. I expect my Cassie to be returned to me quickly and quietly.
The phone went silent as Mr. Baines hung up. I stared at my desk in disbelief for a moment, silently cursing myself for agreeing to this. My computer chimed with an email notification, and there inside was a zip file filled with various documents and photos regarding Cassie. I spent the next few hours delving through the material. Bank statements of transfers to this Bringers of the Light group, photos of Cassie, and one struck me. It was clearly taken at a distance, the work of some other PI most likely, and Cassie was standing with a man. She was petite and almost elven in nature, but the man was wild and unkempt. I wasn't familiar with cults, and their leaders almost always preyed on younger girls, and a rich socialite made the perfect target. Something about the photo, though, seemed off as I examined it. Though positioned behind Cassie, there was some sort of distortion of his image, and around the photo, like he was not completely there. I shook my head and chalked it up to camera artifacts and switched over to the cult itself. The leader appeared to be a man who called himself Master Tammuz. The name was clearly a fake, and after patting myself on the back for some impressive research work, I found out his real name was Benjamin Cross, a British expat who dealt with antiquities. A string of charges for smuggling painted a picture of a man who seemed to enjoy the nefarious side of archaeology. Something must have happened, though, as after acquiring several artifacts through the Iraqi desert, he disappears. Fast forward a few years, and the man known as Tammuz began popping up in various occult circles, claiming to be the Herald of the Light. A few deep web internet inquiries and calls to friends led me to an unlisted web page for the group. The page only had a message which stated the path of light starts with accepting it within. A hidden link then took me to an image of a gothic-looking building. A reverse image search came up with a building match in a small town in coastal Maine. I closed out of everything and moved to get going when I caught myself staring at the photo of Cassie and the man behind her. The distortions looked like they were moving, writhing, and I blinked to see it return to normal. With another glance, I grabbed my things and headed out. The town before me was covered in a thick morning fog as the sun barely crept above the horizon. Jagged and rocky outcrops caught waves, splashing white foam into the air before dragging back out to the sea and repeating over again. Driving through town, it looked fairly dilapidated, with most of the businesses run down or boarded up. A broken sign proclaiming the town to be a great place to live and work seemed to ooze irony. Torn advertisements for a fishery and cannery around the town told a tale in shredded billboards of an abandoned industry town. I drove through the town for a bit before finding the Gothic church from the photo on the internet. Abandoned warehouses and vacant lots made the building stand out as an oddity for the area. I parked my car and set up for observation. The building was likely beautiful at some point, but years of neglect left the structure decaying. Stone masonry was cracked and stained glass reliefs were broken and bored in. Throughout the day, people came in and out of the large two doors, greeting each other with frivolity. All were plain clothed, and something had me a bit disappointed that whatever this cult was didn't have some sort of matching tracksuits. I kept a mental log of the visitors, but Cassie wasn't among them that I could see. I was chewing on a granola bar when I heard a knock on the window behind me. I snapped my head to see a woman, probably in her 30s, with shoulder-length brown hair, waving at me. How she could have snuck up on me, I didn't know. "Are you also interested in joining the light?" she called through the window as I rolled it down. "You don't need to watch from a distance, as all are welcome." Yes. I had found your website and wanted to know more," I responded, playing dumb. The woman's face scrunched with a smile. "Oh, joy. Then come on. I'll take you inside." Master Tammuz was about to begin his daily session. I'm not sure I'm ready yet." The woman grabbed my hand and gestured. "Please come. You've made the pilgrimage this far. Come and finish your journey." I figured I couldn't just sit watching anymore without drawing attention, so I might as well get inside and see if I could find Cassie. "All right. Lead on, miss." "Oh, just Daisy is fine." She waited patiently for me to exit the car and start walking towards the church. Daisy then locked elbows with me, guiding me forward. "You're going to be right home here. I just know it." As we ascended the stairs to the church, others were entering and greeting each other and seemingly paying Daisy and me no mind. The inside looked much more well-maintained than the outside. Everything from the floors to the pews were scrubbed clean. Daisy walked me over to a seat near the front as the rest of the congregation walked in. Whatever religious imagery that had been in the church previously had been removed, and in its wake were hundreds upon hundreds of candles. The wax from multiple uses left to drip over each other and grow again and again. A hush came over the group as a man entered into the front of the room as the man from the photos came to the center. He wore simple dark robes while his long hair flowed wildly as he extended his hands in exultation to the assembled people. "Brothers, sisters, we come here in jubilation of the light," as the crowd echoed back for the light. "The world is sick, brothers and sisters. It is up to us who have taken this light within to spread it far and wide, to relieve the people of their pain." The crowd again echoed for the light as Daisy pulled on my elbow, gesturing for me to repeat it as well. The robed man gestured to the burning mound of candles behind him. "Our community here burns as their lights do. Individual flames burn to form the greater illumination here. So we do have praise to the light. So we give our bodies to the light." I muttered for the light along with everyone to Daisy's smile. From behind a curtain, the form of Cassie Baines emerged in a white robe and joined Tammuz. In her hands, she carried a pile of flowers, which she presented before the pile of candles, bowing deeply. A hymn that sounded like buzzing emerged from the congregation as they watched Cassie present the offering. It was melodic, but also unsettling as my skin began to rise the longer it went on. Cassie walked in front of Tammuz, and I blinked as I tried to focus on the man. The similar distortions from the picture seemed to appear again as I tried to focus on him. I shook my head. I need to get out of here. I looked down at Daisy, who held my arm tightly. The buzzing sounds of the group seemed to be amplified as Cassie joined her voice to their adulation. Please, I need to get out of here. And the sounds began to make me ill, but Daisy simply looked on, making the now skin-crawling sounds herself. I turned back to the man standing behind Cassie as his hands waved in the air, making signs and gestures to the candles which seemed to dance with his movements. I need to go. As I stumbled over Daisy, something inside me needed to get away from the place at any cost. I stumbled getting out of the pew and hit the stone wall of the church, and my vision went black. My eyes shot open, and I found myself lying on a small cot, and an ice pack fell from my head as I sat up. I blinked a few times to see I was in a stone room in the church. The pain from my head was matched by a stinging pain in my right arm, which had a severe cut along it. Did I cut my arm before? Oh, good. You're awake. A soft voice called out to me. I turned to see Cassie walking over to me and placing the ice pack back on my head. I'm so sorry. You came to seek the light and get a bump on your head instead. I rubbed my head and pain shot through me. Our prayer sessions can be powerful. I hope your next experience is better. I looked over Cassie. Her demeanor was warm, and there seemed to be no obvious signs she was being held against her will. My vision must have still been in fog from the hit, as I had a hard time focusing on her and looked away. And how did you come to join this church? She laughed heartily. Oh, well, let's just say I was searching for an answer and found it here with Master Tammuz. He and the congregation have done such wonderful things. She helped me to my feet as I stood up. When you get your bearings, come with me and I'll show you around. Daisy said you sought the light and I want to help. I thought I had hit a bit of luck. I might be able to get Cassie out of here easier than I thought. Yeah, if you could show me around, that would be great. She smiled at me and I returned it, looking for ways to just grab her and leave. After a few minutes of blood rushing to my head, I gestured to Cassie to lead on. So, you said you were searching for an answer. What was that answer? As we walked through the church. Her previous warm visage diminished. Let's just say my family has a long history of choosing the wrong things, and I wanted to make a better choice for the future. We exited back into the now empty main room. You drove through this town to get there, right? And I nodded. Well, this town used to be a company town owned by my family. When they decided it wasn't profitable anymore, they shipped everything overseas. She gestured to the boarded up windows above. The town died as a result. While searching for answers as to why such awful things could be allowed, I sought out Master Tammuz, and he helped me see the world was sick and needed a new light to cure it. And what a light we have found in you, my dear Cassie, as Tammuz entered, walking over to us. Daisy told me we had a new pilgrim today. Welcome to the light, brother. And he placed his hands on my shoulders. There was a presence to the man. He seemed to tower over me, even though we likely were the same height. Yeah, thank you, I responded, trying to take a measure of the leader. The man turned and placed himself behind Cassie, and I knew I needed to rethink how to get her out from underneath his grasp. But the path to the light starts with honesty, brother. So, why don't you tell us why you're really here? I froze. What do you mean? Tammuz raised an eyebrow. We searched your car and found a number of interesting things, Mr. Nate Gossamer. Holding the case file folder. Realizing the situation, I started to back up towards the door when a number of congregation members emerged to block it. I turned to see Daisy walk forward, holding a gun pointed at me. Now, sweetie, don't go anywhere. I looked for any exit, but found all my avenues blocked. So, Mr. Gossamer, why have you polluted this holy space? I looked at the man whose image seemed to be not wholly there in reality, standing behind Cassie. I'm here to rescue Cassie from your clutches. Tammuz let out a deep laugh and walked over towards me, leaving Cassie behind. What? Did you think you were the first person sent by Mr. Baines? He gestured to the members in the room. See here, brothers and sisters? The light cannot and will not be stopped. Evil will continue to stalk us, but again we prevail. The crowd changed for the light. Mr. Gazamar, Cassie is a vessel for the light that will bring a new dawn. It is not me they venerate. It is her. I turned to Cassie to see the distortion in my vision was from her, not Tammuz. All the warmness from before had vanished as she walked towards me. I already told you I sought Master Tammuz out. She walked over to me and grabbed my arm with the cut on it. Where she touched it burned as something underneath the skin moved. I see some of the light has taken root inside you now as well. Be grateful for such a gift. I looked down to see my skin writhe and move. What the fuck did you do to me? She cocked her head looking almost hurt. I simply shared part of the light with you. I turned around to see everyone present had movement under their skin. Some of their arms like myself, others bulging from their heads or faces. What the hell is going on here? Cassie let my arm go and grabbed a knife handed to her by Tammuz and gestured to Daisy to come over. The brown-haired girl joined us, bowing to Cassie. With a quick motion, Cassie slashed the knife across her throat and red viscera sprayed everywhere. I tried to jump back but was grabbed by other members and was restrained. I was forced to watch as Cassie bent down into the blood pooling where Daisy lay gurgling. She reached her hand into the opening she had cut as the assembled crowd chanted for the light at the horrific display. From the body of Daisy emerged a slithering winged creature. Cassie cradled the grotesque thing in her hands, offering her comfort as the body of Daisy was mutilated by its exit. It, like Cassie herself, seemed to create distortions in my vision where I tried to track it as she looked back at me. The world is far too sick to continue on, Mr. Gazamar. As she walked towards me with the abomination that made the same buzzing sounds the congregation had made at the service previously. My parents are living proof we cannot continue. Greedy, selfish, creatures that don't deserve to continue. She moved the writhing thing in front of my face as the skin under my arm reached out to it in seeming communion. I saw you were a veteran. You've seen war, haven't you? You've seen firsthand that I'm right. I shook my head violently in defiance. Whatever these things are, you cannot seriously believe this is the solution. Cassie laughed. They are exactly the solution. Master Tammuz found a very interesting artifact in the desert of Mesopotamia. An idol to the god Nergal contained one of these bringers of the light. Cassie gestured to Tammuz, who bowed and from his robe presented the idol to her. The writhing maggot-winged creature climbed and slithered around the idol from Cassie's hand. Through his herald, Tammuz did bring the light to me. Cassie took the idol to the head of the church floor and raised it high. I am the queen, the vessel of holy light that will cleanse this world. The poor rays of light that inhabit us need to grow and mature, though. You are now part of that wondrous work, so rejoice. The crowd was chanting and buzzing, and my mind was ripped in insanity at the situation. I pushed and shoved the hands holding me away and dashed towards the knife on the floor by the corpse of Daisy. The screams of anger from the congregation at my escape echoed behind me as I picked up the knife as I ran at Cassie. I was determined to end whatever madness had afflicted everyone, pushing Tammuz away as I ran with full speed at Cassie's, whose eyes went wide as I plunged the dagger into her heart. Her eyes went wide, and a smile crept across her face. I looked down to see not blood but maggots fall out of the winged creature, hopped off its perch on the stone idol, slashed at my face. I tried to bat it away as the claws raked over me. As the creature tore me, I could hear Cassie's laugh as she pulled the knife out and threw it on the ground. I am the swarm of light, the hive of the dawn divinely chosen. as insects and creatures I didn't recognize swarmed out of her mouth. With every ounce of strength I had left, I leapt at Cassie, blood pooling over my eyes from the lacerations as I did so. I pushed with everything I had, knocking her backwards into the hundreds of candles behind her as she pushed me aside in my assault. A high-pitched scream ripped through the church as flames engulfed Cassie. All the members of the congregations fell to their knees. The horrific buzzing sound ceased while they clawed at themselves, pulsing and writhing around, and their skin seemed to rebel at Cassie's screech of pain, and as the flames consumed her, so did the creatures consume their hosts. As Cassie burned, as if in effigy, I grabbed the knife and slit my arm open as a writhing, tentacled creature lashed out in anger. Dripping blood everywhere, I ripped the grotesque thing that had embedded itself in me out, throwing it towards the now spreading fire. The screams of the assembled people became deafening as Cassie burned in chunks as creatures tried to flee the inferno that was her body. The fire had engulfed the area and smoke choked the air. I saw an exit and dashed through the blaze to find it barricaded. Coughing on the polluted air, I used my one good arm to throw boards and debris aside. The fire was now raging and my skin began to burn in the heat. With a final push, I got the door open to the outside and fell forward. The night sky was illuminated by the burning church and I stumbled away to my car. I turned back to hear unearthly wails of pain before being silenced. After the fire, it was reported as a mass suicide. The group's literature and activities were declared to be a cult and tied up neatly in a story with their fiery demise. Everyone could be identified from dental records except Cassie, which led Mr. Baines to conclude she must still be out there and fired me. Little did he know what she was or had become. Tending to the wounds on my arm and face, I looked something horrific. However, my appearance was the least of my concerns. I cannot close my eyes without seeing the horrible creatures, the writhing things in my body, the formless horror that was Cassie Baines. What's worse, who could I tell of this and be believed? I took a swig of the strongest liquor I had and fell into bed. I looked down at my arm and felt ill. I felt ill because I couldn't quite focus on it. Like it was distorted. Take 2 steps to the right. That's what the fortune cookie said. You're confused, right? I was too. Confused as shit. At least I was until the morning after. It started making more sense over the next few days. Then it was confusing as hell again for a bit. But then it started remaking sense in a different way. A way that doesn't actually make any sense at all. The night I unfuried that first tiny scroll of faded papyrus through. My only response was, huh? The cookies came in matte black wrappers. They were also delicious. Emphasis necessary because god damn these things were good. Nothing was on the packaging. I can't divulge ingredients. They tasted like honey and salted caramel if the salt came from the seas of Atlantis. And the bees nested in the apiaries of Babylon. Not the usual brand Mr. Zing scent, but I hadn't ordered from Mr. Zing. Mr. Zing had gone out of business. For the first time in 15 years, I had to get my chop suey somewhere new. I decided to use the opportunity. I was going to try every Chinese food joint in Marathon County. A noble challenge, right? Bob Hastings, Marathon County's first Chinese food critic. Maybe even start a YouTube, I thought. Look, it was something to make the weeks go by a little easier. My life was... You know Milhouse's dad in The Simpsons. I envied that guy. I made a spreadsheet for my little quest and everything. I'm old enough now that the chance for kids is probably behind me. Settling down into a meaningful marriage looks doubtful. You find the highlights where you can. Sue me. Anyhow, I went for the first name on the list. Asia House. Uninventive name, but this is semi-rural Wisconsin. My expectations weren't high. Food was okay, but the cookies constantly derailed me from my spreadsheet-based culinary quest. The moment the first crumb touched the tip of a taste bud, the world disappeared. I could feel warmth on my cheeks, but those cheeks were miles away. A chest heaving with sobs of unrestrained joy was a universe below me. My pokey asylum janitor budget trailer evaporated. I was floating somewhere. I couldn't make out the location, mainly because I couldn't see. Conan O'Brien's TV bullshit warbled into vapor. Nostrils full of Chinese food and body odor quietened themselves to stillness. Only one sense lived, and boy was it ever alive. I woke from the taste coma after what felt like hours. In reality, I was out for the time it took a Conan to get a hollow laugh from his even hollower audience. It was upon awakening from my descent into the Babylonian honey dimension that I noticed my fortune. Take 2 steps to the right. After my brain settled down from the excitement of the trip, it decided to have a migraine. That meant I did too. So I found myself lying in the dark for the rest of the night, trying not to puke. You know what I put the whole experience down to? Bad pork. As I drifted in and out of pain, nausea, sleep, I kept re-threading the fingers of my thoughts through the fortune. It was intentional. The musings were aimless, driftwood, as though the 0.5 by 3 inch yellowed paper was a tapeworm wrapped tight around my cortex, bleeding itself drip by drip into the semi-lucid space between waking thoughts and the backward logic of dreams. Definitely bad pork. This continued throughout the following morning, right up until the crossbow bolt. I was at the counter of the drugstore. The migraine had stopped, you know? Dollars ain't exactly flowing right now, so I'm far from stocked up on aspirin. And yeah, Chinese food, tight budget, priorities, I know. Save it. Do you want to hear what happened when I took 2 steps to the right or not? Take 2 steps to the right. I said it out loud as I did it. The tapeworm memory of the fortune had managed to drip back again. With my mind mulling the price of insulin these days, my body decided to take the instruction for a test drive. Whoosh. Thunk. Oh, shit. Darren, what the fuck? It just went off, man. It just went off. Behind me, a woman in the queue was screaming. I registered her before my brain did some backtracking and remembered the noise preceding her howls. Whoosh, thunk. The dull thud of sharpened steel driving into plaster wall, muted by something dull and wet and living. 2 male voices, both young and hungry and out of their depth. That's when my brain checked in with my eyes. They showed up at the pharmacist dangling from the stucco opposite by her crossbow bolt-pierced skull, and so my brain called my mouth and told it to start screaming too. The sight of Mrs. Kravoplitz's eyeball dangling on her shattered cheek wasn't my only cause to scream. I was also screaming because of where I'd been standing before my body obeyed the fortune cookie demand. I was stood right in front of her. For those of you that called it, reflopify your ego boners. Implication here is pretty fucking obvious. If I'd been standing 2 steps to the left, the crossbow misfired by hapless armed robbers, Darren Balkins and Howie Gruff, would have found the back of my skull. Even Sheriff Harworth pointed out how lucky I was to still be walking. I can still feel the whiffle of the bolt sailing past. The splash of her skull on my face is clearer, though. The cookies saved my life. I found the fortune under my bed/couch within 10 seconds of returning to the trailer after giving my witness statement. Sure enough, there were the same words I was half convinced belonged to a bad pork-induced hallucination. Take 2 steps to the right. I'll skip some nonsense for you. I thought I had some Chinese food guardian angel. Yada shmada. I ordered from Asia House every night for the next week. You're Wondering about the bank balance, yeah? Cookie number 2 dealt with that. 3 up, 2 across. I was at the gas station when my body and tongue worked that one out. They pointed to the scratch card on the Pyrex display. Some $5 low odds gamble. 3 up and 2 across later, I was $500 richer. Not life-changing money, but enough to matter. Of course, I questioned it. I visited Asia House. They used the same brand of fortune cookies as Mr. Zing had. I know because the confused Cantonese-speaking man behind the counter kept throwing them at me once he'd had enough of my frantic babbling about acid trips, crossbows, and the Final Destination movies. I even tracked down their delivery guy, a stoner on a moped with the rather uninspired name Kyle. Kyle didn't have a clue what was going on either, but he did sell me some pot, so that trip wasn't wasted at least. The cookies new Mr. Zing put into the bag were still there whenever Kyle left the bag outside my door. I asked Kyle to check. Only when I opened the bag did the standard red and gold packaging become the matte black wrapping of my caramel honey wisdom crackers. There was no explanation. I was just the luckiest man alive. About damn time, too. That's how it felt. And that's why I decided to be chill about the mystery. I'd been chosen for their blessing. That's all that matters. Oh, I'd been chosen, all right. It was the blessing part I got laughingly wrong. Cookie number 7, a week later, was when the fortune started to play their hand. So far they led me to a few minor scratch card wins and 2 successful dates. I wanted more. I was awaiting the micro scroll that unearthed a mansion or a Mercedes. Again, de-rectify your mental chub on. This isn't some greed on Doe's man, monkey paw. Be careful what you wish for bullshit. I wish it was. I'd at least feel like I got what was coming to me, if I'd earned my punishment. It was way more fucked, way less fair, and way, way less easy to explain. Oh shit. What the fuck? My expletives echoed down the St. Dionysus corridor, prompting tuts from the cohorts of flustered lab coats crowded around a cell door. Then they saw me, and their annoyance turned to concern, and then alarm. I was at work, taking a hallway floor with my mop. It was when drowning in daydream that the coils of prophetic suggestions once more ensnared my reflexes. The advice from the prior night's cookie had been simple. Swat the fly. Buzzing by my ear, a body long since needing no mental permission to act, my hand slammed into the fat, listless insect. I heard the crashing glass and saw the bloom of scarlet before I felt the pain or realized the fly had settled on a floor-ceiling mirror. Crack. Good lord, he's bleeding. Liana. Call the medical bay. Tell them one of the janitorials is coming. I wanted to add a U to one of my fucks. Upon hearing the disdain in the word janitorial, my mouth couldn't find the motions, though. With each progressive fuck, my shock and pain combo transformed into unsureness and panic. Why? Because I was still looking in what remained to be the shattered mirror. My pale, sweating face was staring back at me. So was something else. I only saw him because I was watching the reflection of the fly. You know, the one I'd half shattered a mirror and opened my palm killing. The half-inch thing was very much dead, crushed remains upturned and twitching. The other side of the looking glass was a different story. The fly still very much alive. Reflection was strutting across the fractured surface like it wasn't a mirror at all, but a window. Reflection fly beat its legs against the glass, daring me to believe my eyes, taunting me into clutching at some false rationale. I blinked and it was airborne. It flew into the mirror corridor, right toward the cracked, distorted reflection of my open mouth. I was already confused as hell at the moment the weight of an invisible invertebrate force slammed into my uvula. I started choking. I couldn't scream when I felt the 6 legs scratching at the back of my throat. The blockage was too big. I watched the bulge travel down my reflected Adam's apple like I'd swallowed a damn mouse whole. My mind wheeled, flailing desperately for an explanation. I could see the dead fly on our side of the glass. It was still right where I'd smushed it. The fly that crawled across the shattered other side and into my reflection's gaping jaws had no real-life counterpart. I couldn't put this down to hallucination either, because I could feel every writhing, twitching movement of it. The fly's journey through my esophagus was slow, torturous, agony both because of the repulsive context of the discomfort and the incomprehensity of it. However, the fly wasn't what had been watching me. It wasn't the reason I waved off the offer/insistence of medical attention and got back to my trailer as fast as weak legs and stiff pedals allow. It was when I bent forward to try and cough up the buzzing mass fuzzing its way toward my stomach that I saw what else looked back besides my purple-faced mirror self. He was behind me. Right behind me. So close that my acknowledgement of his presence brought on an awareness of a sticky breath across my back. Beyond the wet pants between my shoulder blades, he had no presence outside the mirror world. As a quick glance behind me confirmed, that's why the hot, arrhythmic dampness did a balloon animal number on my trembling gut. He was short enough I'd missed his chitinous scalp scraping into view over my shoulders. If I hadn't bent forward to try and regurgitate the burrowing fly, I'd never have exposed him. A man, boy, thing. Skin bumped, rugged, bone-like. His stiff epidermis was the negative light blackness of unmapped ocean trenches, of undead stars and stellar gulfs, of the final sight seen when buried alive. His skin, though, his eyes shone, those blank circular beacons, those red orbs that burned brighter than a crematorium furnace yet cast no shadows on his flat face. I didn't get a chance to see its mouth before the black spots of oxygen depletion clouded details. I didn't have to. I could feel him smiling. I noped out so hard I wasn't aware of heading home until back at the trailer. I never found out how the docs at St. Dionysus reacted to my screeching outburst. I'm sure Dr. Anand and co. don't appreciate being flailed at like that. I'm guessing there's paperwork. A disciplinary awaits, I'll bet. I don't know. Haven't been back since. I was rattled for many reasons, but mostly because I never managed to cough up the weight of the burrowing fly. On the ride back, I felt the light tickle of it drip into my stomach, quietly into a near stillness I could just about ignore. It took effort not to think of the fat blue bottle gorging itself on my stomach contents. For hours I had waking nightmares of the mirror fly perversely intruding upon my insides. More than once I had to slap myself back to the here and now. I tried to convince myself I'd misinterpreted the cookie message somehow, and forced the mirror fly out of mind. Last week had been the best in decades. I wasn't ready to give up my good fortune. I'd spent too long living with bad. It wouldn't be fair. I didn't bother with the chop suey that night. Something about the smell of it put me off. It wasn't any different, but the usual MSG fried noodle aroma didn't sit right. I went upright for the cookie. As usual, before reading the papyrus, I crammed the shattered cooking in my eager maw. I sank back into the bed/couch, ready to escape my troubles for a few moments in the honey abyss. Straight away I knew something was wrong. When Conan's bullshit slowed into base note intangibility, it left no silence. I could hear something, a buzzing, low at first, but within a few pseudo moments, it was at the forefront of my awareness, grabbing the sugar-rich bliss I'd expected and forcing it into a jarring, head-spinning dance. I returned to Earth not from a nibbana of pure taste, but from living in the roar of a trillion of minuscule wings thrashing. Migraine number 8 was something else. Oh yeah, they hadn't stopped. This one was beyond the others though. It had me so close to attempting self-trepanning, the drill bit was at my temple. I didn't fall asleep in the end, but passed out from pain. Whether asleep or awake, my aching mind kept repeating the same mantra. Eat it. Eat it all. The following morning, a truck carrying processed sugar careened off the freeway and crashed into the gates and communal bathrooms of our trailer complex. A crowd had gathered round, jaws agape, ogling the scene with hungry eyes and hungrier smartphone cameras. Curiosity had me jostling to the front of the throng of neighbors. Migraine or not, the human inability to ignore tragic spectacle is unbreakable. My reaction to the carnage was first to retch. My third reaction was also to retch, but that was because of my second reaction. Eat it. Eat it all. The familiar pull, that epiphany like tugging flowing from my gut to every nerve, my thoughts ran icy clear. No, not this. Nothing good can happen if... I won't. It was then I learned. Following the cookie's advice had become obeying the cookie's demands without me noticing. I didn't think I'd have to resist. I didn't know there was anything to resist. My compulsive stride toward the blood and septic water-soaked sugar hillock had me just as confused as the crowd. The first time I puked was from the smell of burst septic tank and sight of disemboweled truck driver. The second time was because I realized I had no choice anymore. Eat it all. In front of me was a dune of sticky mulch already turning to oily syrup in the crashed engine leakage. Much of the ivory white sugar was stained. Some patches were red where the momentum of the crash carried the trucker's blood and offal out his windshield-sliced stomach. The rest of the trucker was laying some way away, body and head too separate to bother checking for a pulse. Crows already circling above the pine tree canopy. Patches closest to where the burst septic tank fountain rained where brown, muddy, reeking blobs of granular, month-old chemical shit water that grew until gravity had them snowballing down the sticky hills. At the base, all varieties of spoiled sugar met to form a sickly acid puddle of eye-watering awfulness. Still gawping as much as the crowd, I watched myself scoop up a great wad of the thick, toxic cess jelly. I looked down at the hot, dripping sludge in my cupped palms. Cries of what the fuck rang out from a food stamp crowd I'd last seen 50,000 miles ago. I fell through the tunnel vision, screaming as the compulsion to obey the cookie bent my elbows and raised my wrists. I could feel the head of the bond and sun-baked septic fluids, the nostril-curling tang of freshly spilled gasoline, the gut-turning sickliness of the scent of pure sugar. Unable to stop myself, I buried my face in the steaming ooze. Then I started eating. I could hear barfing from every direction. I wished I could barf too, but my stomach wasn't mine anymore. I could taste all of it. Every drip of blood, gas, septic tank, hydroxide, and liquefied human shit. The stench of each warm, moist handful was so powerful my nose burned. The gasoline and waste chemicals left ulcers as soon as they touched the soft tissue of my mouth. Somehow, the taste of my every ingredient managed to remain distinct, palpable, and horrifying. I was weeping by the end of the ordeal 3 hours later when Sheriff Harworth finally arrived and escorted me back to my trailer. You might have seen the clips, those Tor-browsing wrongins among you. The guy in the faded Seinfeld tee, The one bleeding directly into camera, bubbling piss, shit, blood, sugar at the corners of his mouth, rivers of it dribbling down his chin as he shoves fistful after fistful of it into his face. The clip called "Someone Please Stop Me" .webm. That's me. The cop is Sheriff Harworst, and no, he never prosecuted me for the punch. He knows everyone who's no one around here. "This ain't like you, Bob Hastings," is a sentiment that spared me a fair bit of jail time. He made sure I was settled before leaving. He's a decent guy, so he had me clean my mouth out with vodka, the closest thing to a sterilizer on hand. Put the blood, shit, gas, sugar, eating, and violence down to the stress of the near-death experience with the crossbow bolt. Told my neighbor Sally Tully to keep an eye on me, which is 100% why she died. So I'm not taking the guilt there. That's on Harworst. The sheriff departed when I was drifting into sleep on the bed/couch. The weight of exhaustion from the weeks again sinking me deeper into my dreams than my subconscious mind had ever dared delve. My slumber was filled with visions of rolling seas. Not seas of water, not oceans of this earth at all. Seas of uncountable black bodies, a rolling mass of twitching insect life so vast it swallowed entire continents. I floated above it, clinging to a hand I couldn't see no matter how much I strained to look up. My dream self, who this far below the surface of lucidity had come full circle and felt more real than any waking self I'd ever been, could do nothing but stare below his dangling naked feet and listen. The buzzing, the deafening barrage of an incomputable number of wings thrumming against an immeasurable count of hard, fat, rot black bodies. A sound that raked nails across every nerve in my resolve. Sound isn't the word for it, but I don't have a better one. It was to hearing as the salted caramel honey that had been to taste. An all-encompassing purification of a distilled sensation of being beyond more experience. Time was no dimension here. For minutes, years, seconds, decades, I gazed into the frothing hive actively, listening to the swells and waves shriek their chitinous crescendo. As measures of non-time passed, the din got better at taking form. The noise found latches in my understanding around which it could bend itself into shapes, words, meaning. The mindless noise was anything but. It was a chant, a chorus, a mantra regurgitated over and over in endless praise by the filthy surf. A bride, a bride, a bride for the king of flies. A perverse inversion of a monastic choir with more voices than there are numbers to count with. Once the words were clear, I became re-aware of the hand gripping mine. It was hard, clammy, and covered in coarse hairs. I looked up. The bulbous red orbs beamed back at me. The chitinous, yet humanoid nakedness, beneath twitching in what I knew to be anticipation. I could see everything now. The absence of a nose, the curled, useless pairs of vestigial extra arms protruding from shallow armpits, the swinging barbed appendage between thick, digit-grade legs. The mouth was the worst part. Hard flesh parted to reveal cracked, clearly human lips. They curled into a smile, narrow and small, but that carried jubilance beyond all reason, a euphoria that would break even the most devoted hedonist. Then the rows of teeth parted. The last thing before waking up to my sticky carpet was the king of flies' mouth opening, his long tubular maxillae flopping from where a human tongue should be, the phlegmy slickness of it stroking across my face, of its length penetrating my unresisting mouth, followed the mirror fly's path toward my beckoning stomach. It was Sally's frantic knocks that did it. I'd been asleep for over 24 hours apparently, despite falling into unconsciousness on the bed couch. I found the waking world again on the floor. My mouth was full of something rotten and acrid. It was the remnants of week old chop suey from the trash. Bob, you in there? I gagged, pulling chunks of moldy pork and maggot-covered noodles from my stuffed cheeks with trembling fingers. At least, I did until I noticed the state of my hands. They were covered in something. A thick, ichorous substance that looked far too much like the residue left on my face, mouth, and throat in the nightmare's final moments. Fuck off, Sally. I fucking won't. Do you know how much shit Harworth was threatened to unturn a blind eye to if he catches me using and you in here dead? I need to go find a fix, Bob, and I can't do that if I ain't confirmed you ain't dead. You can hear me, can't you? The banging on the door continued. I pulled myself to my feet. That's when I noticed the first sign of wrongness. The initial clue I was in the endgame of whatever the cookies had planned. I screamed when I saw what awaited in the corner. You're screaming now? That's it, Bob. Screw your door. It was a fortune cookie. A black mat wrapped fortune cookie. No chop suey. No Asia house bag. Just the cookie. I'd opened it by the time Sally's boot made short work of the flimsy trailer door. Her sweaty palm was on my shoulder as I read the scroll within. Kiss her. I was too weak to try and resist the tug this time. My body obeyed, the meaning clear and free of riddles. It was the least romantic kiss in human history. Both our eyes remained open, twin, near-perfect circles of disbelief. Her lips were warm, the pressure of them forcing apart chaps and splits of my own. She didn't try to pull away, instead faltering her arms in mid-air. She was screaming, though. It was hard to hear over the muted roar of wings, but she managed to get out a few yells. The lurch of my diaphragm pinning itself to my ribs brought with it flashbacks to the rolling abyss of compound eyes and twitching insectoid limbs. I could feel them before she could hear them. The scratch of thousands of tiny legs crawling up my throat, past my probing tongue and onward into their new vessel. I felt my neck bulge and stretch to accommodate for the tide. Pain and bewilderment had thick blobs of salt water falling from my cheeks, but my rogue body pressed on with the embrace. The scream of wings was deafening even through inches of flesh and cartilage. Before long, Sally's neck was bulging too. She was trying to resist by that point, her frantic, track-marked arms seemingly unable to decide between clawing at my back or her distended throat. Nothing about Sally Tully's death was quick. It was slow, drawn out, excruciating to witness, let alone experience. It took about a minute for the volume of flies to rupture her stomach. A few more still for the blood to start pooling at her nostrils, tear ducts, and the crotch and seat of her dirty jeans. I could taste it too. A metallic tang gargling up from her throat, tangible even through the mouthfeel of the swarm. Then the fat bodies crawling out of her ears, then out her nose, then from behind her eyes. My arms remained locked in place, holding her as captive to me as I was to the cookies, despite my inner monologue using every profanity to urge them into release. Sally did get free eventually, but that's only because it's difficult to keep hold of somebody after they've exploded. A bride for the king of flies. The chant reverberated up from the memory as the confetti chunks of burst neighbor fell through the cloud of freed insects. The intense buzzing filling my trailer threatened every second to turn itself into words, to bring the harrowing mantra into reality. A bride for the king of flies. I'd already started trying to put dots together. When I'd read the words kiss her, I'd thought, hoped that my part in all this was minor. Sally Tully, the bride of the Fly King, the main character in some eldritch game I was unfortunate enough to exist on the peripherals of. I'd fallen into something bigger than myself, but not focused on me. I'd experienced was chaff from whatever whirlwind of nightmares the universe had planned for Sally Tully. Please let that be the case. Every one of those hopes was dashed when her trembling body could no longer contain the thick insectoid mass, pushing her liquidated organs out of any available orifice. A bride, a bride, a bride for the king of flies. I don't remember how long I screamed, but I know my throat was bleeding by the time I managed to stop. Remember the faint flickering of the mirror fly in my stomach I said I could almost ignore? I couldn't anymore. It had been almost dormant since the mirror incident, but now though? Now it was alive again. And it was flickering, flitting, buzzing, or any synonym for wing-like activity had long since been rendered inappropriate. No, now my lexicon needed new words. Words like writhing, wriggling, worming, digging. A sharp stab of pain from my navel. I bent double on the floor-to-ceiling blanket of crawling chitinous bodies. My trailer was gone, buried beneath the roiling blanket. I was alone now with the swarm, sobbing and clutching my belly while the countless probing mouth organs liquefied and consumed every trace of Sally Tully. I won't lie to you. The churning, eely discomfort forcing its way south toward my midriff meant I really didn't give a flying fuck about her anymore. I'd already realized her death was as senseless and wasteful as it seemed, that she was the innocent bystander I'd naively hoped I was. A bride, a bride, a bride for the king of flies. The ringing buzz from the living carpet started making good on its threats of coherence. I felt my palms pressing into my ears, the pressure left on my skull by the lipless words, somehow greater than that long narrowness undulated between my organs, moving and pushing them to the side as it approached its destination. Through the white blinding flashes crisscrossing my vision, I kept coming back to those red orbs. The grotesquely human smile, a long cable salad of prehensile, organic tubes flopping from between crooked, yellowing teeth. I was still bent over double when I felt the coarse hairs on the back of my neck, the chitinous arms wrapping slowly around my shoulders. The horror was so great my eyes rolled back in their skull. I was babbling incoherent nonsense at the top of my lungs. My already long since broken psyche unable to process his emergence from reflections and dreams into cold, hard reality. He was hugging me, holding me from behind like a lover supporting a grieving spouse. The sticky panting was at my neck, moisture-forming drops of foul-smelling condensation that rolled down my cheek. When he spoke, it was like having to endure a mealworm burrowing through my eardrum. Breathe, my bride. Breathe. Cracked words, crooked words, words from a maxilla and mandible-filled mouth which had no right being able to form speech. I didn't have to have the meaning explained. The sharp kick at the groin was all the indication I needed. I'd never had kids of my own, but I understood the biology of childbirth, the mechanics of it. I think that made the situation worse, you know? Innocence would have stopped my brain from skipping ahead as it marched up the puzzle pieces. What? No. I can't have Another explosion of pain at my crotch was accompanied by a hot breath cooing at my ear. Shh, my bride. Shh. You accepted this. You were ripe, ready, a willing mate. Your body knows it. That's why it followed, why it obeyed. Fingers bristling with coarse hairs brushed my cheek. I didn't see how the king of flies materialized from whatever hellish pseudo-reality he hails. It's possible he simply emerged from the throbbing molasses, the same thick rug of impenetrably black forms that swarmed over my groin and stomach as he said the words, obeyed. A swell of legs, thoraxes, and compound eyes washed over my lower body. Digestive fluids piranha schooling away my pants and boxers. I was beyond screaming now. This is a shame because if any sight so far warranted screaming, it was what waited beneath the melting denim and polyester. A bride, a bride, a bride for the king of flies. A bulging, clearly defined bump wriggled inside my belly. Something as long as a football but half as wide. Something rigid and writhing that pushed its way past my decoiled intestines to burrow down below my pelvic bone. I was on my backside huffing like, well, we've all seen childbirth in movies, right? A fresh kick, another push from beneath the flesh between my thighs. A sudden flash of odor let me know whatever was coming had forced the half-digested rotting Chinese food from my bowels. The living carpet squealed in collective, grinding glee. Fresh swells of hive activity lapping as my prolapsed and leaking colon. I don't know which emotion was stronger, the seizure-inducing terror or the coma-inducing pain. Razor wire snakes, if it slithered across my every muscle, all correlating to my groin. My eyes stopped rolling, my gaze down in wide-eyed horror at the butchery playing out between my trembling, sweating thighs. I'm not what you'd call endowed, but it's amazing how large a man looks when he's splayed inside out. The final pushes made themselves known, as sharp at blinding as the other kicks had been. The pulsating thing hadn't even got started. The mound of soft tissue beyond my pubic bone protruded. Within moments, the nerve-rich flesh of the perineum had followed suit, which was exactly as painful as you're imagining. Inch by writhing inch, the bulge at my belly vanished, pulling the last of itself into the depths between my intestines. No, but no, please, no, I'm... Breathe, my bride. Breathe. I don't know how I remained conscious when the mandibled head started pushing and chewing its way through my bladder. What little length I possessed ballooned for a few eternity-long moments, the spell only ending when a spurt of dark red, almost purple spats a full 5 feet from the tip. That's when the flesh gave. A banana peel split of veiny skin pushed aside in nanoseconds. A dozen flesh rapid fire stabbings slicing through the awareness as firm orbs and soft skin full of nerve endings were rent by the gnashing, biting pressure. Look, look, my bride. No, I can't. I won't. You're crowning. His rusted words pulled my rolling eyes back between my legs. The scrollious carpet of bodies was now playing midwife. The swarming flies moved like their aunt cousins, using the bulk of their insurmountable number to form appendages. These twitching, shivering arms crashed into the burning carnage between my legs. I felt a pulling, an uncomfortable interior lurching as the chubby, rigid thrashing was extracted from my spread hips. The king of flies told no lies. I was crowning. There was a head poking out from the gaping chasm where reproductive tissue once lay. I couldn't scream anymore. I'd fallen too far into the insanity caused by agony and incomprehensible circumstance. There was nothing but laughter now, a high-pitched cackling. It frightens me to know came from my own throat. Once the quivering rug's prying fingers removed the wailing newborn, I gazed upon it for the first time, and the penny I can't actually explain finally dropped. It was a maggot, a half-foot-long, beer-can-thick maggot, a maggot whose mandibled mouth contained tiny human teeth, and in whose 6-eye sockets sat sparkling sapien blue irises. Irises I knew well, they were in every photo of me ever taken. A maggot that wailed with lungs and vocal cords that made sounds any mammalian mother would recognize as infant distress. The king of flies stepped over me. He crouched, scooping up the wailing creature in his thick arms. I was still laughing. I laughed as I watched him cooing to it, hysterics still consuming me as his prehensile mouth tube regurgitated black sludge into his offspring's waiting maw. I couldn't think of it as our offspring. I wouldn't and still can't. Not that first one, and not any of the ones that have and will follow. The buzzing horde wasn't done with me, you see. Just as the tide has risen to lap at the prolapse colon leakage, it now got to work removing the unnecessary remnants of my biological maleness. To my horror, what they revealed wasn't a cavernous flesh wound I'd have the mercy of bleeding out from. New flesh lay beneath. Flesh I knew was mine due to the pins and needles tickle of the swarm's infinite probing. Suckling mouth parts, not skin, nor was it chitin either. It was a halfway, a rigid, muscular surface glistening with sweated mucus. At its center was a new opening, the orifice from which the king of flies would reap his army of hairs. It was wide, leaking yellowish fluid. The sink rising from it matched exactly the fumes of the blood shit gasoline sugar sludge I'd wolfed down the previous day. Even though it matched nothing I'd seen on a human, the area had a distinct sliced papiness to its shape. The folds and creases, although out of proportion, ran in approximation with a vague, perversely vulvaic anatomical sense I recognized. My deranged cackling didn't stop as the probing horde suckled the last of the afterbirth from my grotesque new anatomy. It didn't falter when the king of flies spread his entire 7-foot wingspan and howled in triumph. His spawn cradled in those muscular, coarse-haired arms. It only stopped when I coughed and looked down to see my human tongue limp and dead in my lap. That was 3 days ago. I've borne as many offspring for him since. My body isn't done changing, though into what I don't know. He isn't always here. The first time he left, I pulled myself into the bed, couch, feeling around for my phone under the thrumming black mass that still coats every surface in the trailer. The pain continues to be insurmountable. That's what pushed me to make the climb, pulling my limp and now decaying legs behind me. I haven't tried phoning Sheriff Harworst. No point. I can't speak with these tubes. The 12-inch long, prehensile sucker tendrils dangling from my aching jaw. Too fast for me to close my mouth. Since that my tongue-shedding cough, there's not been a moment I feel like I'm not choking. Part of me is tempted to try removing my jaw, just to create some breathing room. Maybe that'll be the next thing to go. Speaking of, that's why I've been writing this. The living carpet won't let me leave. The flies have sealed the door tight. Maybe Sheriff Harworst will come poking around eventually, but I can't count on it. Marathon County is a strange place, and he's probably got his hands full with whatever case up by now. I think I'm beyond rescue. I'm not writing for salvation, but for meaning. This message is for me using the last of Bob Hastings. I want you to remember he existed, you see. I can't find acceptance of this twisted fate without knowing someone somewhere remembers. Consider this his obituary, I guess. I don't know where Bob Hastings went wrong. Maybe it was opening that first Misfortune cookie. Maybe he opened the door to the realm of the King of Flies when he took that first bite. Maybe it was reading the fortune. Or maybe he still had a chance right up until he took those fateful 2 steps to the right. Maybe something he did long before Mr. Zing's closed its doors was the catalyst. Only the King of Flies knows, and his wet, puckered lips are sealed. What I do know is that I won't be Bob Hastings much longer. A few days max. I was born Bob Hastings, but I'll die something else. One of the many brides of the King of Flies. So Bob Hastings' selfish little life means something to someone somewhere. Let me use that last of him to send out this warning. Don't open, eat, or in any way engage with a matte black fortune cookie. The King of Flies is out there, and our family is always hungry to grow.